In 16 months, 22 women lost their lives across 2 countries. All of them were found in vacant rooms of their own homes. All of them had simply placed a room for rent sign in their window. The man who came knocking was polite. He carried a Bible. He spoke quietly and smiled at the door. Police in a dozen cities had no idea they were all chasing the same person. By the time they finally connected the dots, the number of cases had already crossed an international border. This is how it unfolded, and how one of the most dangerous offenders North America had ever seen managed to stay invisible for so long. February 20th, 1926, San Francisco, California. Clara Newman was 60 years old. She ran several boarding houses across San Francisco and was known as a careful, no-nonsense landlady. She did not rent to drinking men or sailors. When she placed a room for rent sign in the window of her Pierce Street home, she was simply looking for a good, reliable tenant. The man who showed up at her front door was well-dressed, polite, and quiet. He tipped his hat. He spoke in a soft voice. Clara was satisfied with what she saw and let him inside without a second thought about who she was letting in. That same morning, her nephew Merton Newman was upstairs in his second-floor apartment. He walked down to the kitchen and found the stove still on, with food abandoned on it. In the hallway, he ran into a large, dark-complexioned man with his hat pulled low, walking toward the front door. The man told Merton to let the landlady know he would be back in an hour to take the room. Then he turned and walked out without waiting for an answer. Several hours later, with Clara nowhere to be found, the boarders of the house searched every room. They found Clara Newman in a vacant upper apartment. She was found dead. Investigators noted additional disturbing evidence at the scene. Police had very little to work with. One brief description of a large, dark-complexioned man. No name, no clear lead, and no idea they had just counted their first case. Laura Beale was 63 years old. Her husband came home from work one afternoon and could not find her anywhere. A careful search of the house eventually led to a vacant apartment on an upper floor. She had been taken from this world in similar disturbing circumstances. The press quickly linked the 2 cases and began warning the public about a mysterious dark stranger moving through the Bay Area. Tips poured into police stations from across the region. None of them led anywhere useful. The story eventually dropped off the front pages. People assumed the man had moved on to somewhere far away. He had not moved on at all. He had simply moved to a different street. By June 1926, the man had found his way into the San Francisco home of Lillian St. Mary, a widow who had recently started renting rooms to bring in extra money. He told her he had just arrived in the city and was saving to get married. She showed him a vacant second-floor apartment and walked inside ahead of him to describe the room. Once she entered the room, he attacked. A boarder coming up the stairs minutes later found the apartment door standing open, and Lillian was found dead in her room. She had made no sound loud enough for anyone to hear. 2 months later, in August, Mary Nisbet, 50 years old, disappeared from her Oakland boarding house. Her husband Stephen came home from work to find dinner half prepared on the stove and his wife gone. He searched the house with neighbors and eventually found Mary in the second-floor bathroom. She was found dead in the bathroom. Investigators described the case as especially disturbing. Investigators held her husband briefly as a suspect. By the time they cleared him and understood what they were dealing with, the man they were looking for was already several states away. Portland saw 3 women taken from this world in just 3 days. Beata Withers, a divorced woman in her mid-30s who ran a boarding house, was found inside a trunk in the attic of her own home. Virginia Grant was found hidden behind a furnace in a vacant property. Mabel Fluke was discovered in an attic crawl space. Something had clearly changed. For the first time, the offender was making a deliberate effort to conceal the remains rather than leaving them where they were. Portland police issued public warnings. Local newspapers told women never to show a vacant room to a male stranger on their own. People listened and took it seriously, but only for a while. Caution fades with time, and that is exactly what he counted on every single time. The pace of the crimes did not slow down. He moved through Los Angeles, then up to Seattle, then eastward through Iowa and Kansas City. In Philadelphia, a 60-year-old woman lost her life. Then Buffalo, New York. Then Detroit, Michigan, where on June 1st, 1927, 2 women in the same building were taken from this world within just a few hours of each other. Investigators recovered evidence of a distinctive method. The physical evidence at the scene matched the pattern investigators were tracking, a detail that investigators noted carefully, knowing it could help identify the person responsible. Police departments across multiple states were now exchanging messages and comparing crime details. The pattern was far too consistent across too many cities to be a coincidence. But the man moved faster than anyone could communicate. By the time a description arrived in one city, he had already been and gone from another. 20 women across more than a dozen American cities had lost their lives. And then he crossed the border into Canada, the decision that would finally prove to be his last mistake. He crossed from Minnesota into Manitoba in the first week of June 1927. His first stop in Winnipeg was a second-hand clothing store on a downtown street, where he traded in his clothes for a plain worker's outfit and walked away with $1 in change. He then made his way to Catherine Hill's boarding house on Smith Street, a quiet residential neighborhood near the center of the city. He told her his name was Mr. Woodcoats. He paid $1 and promised 3 more by Friday. Catherine Hill described him to police later as a pleasant, quiet Christian man who gave her no reason for concern. On the afternoon of June 9th, 1927, 14-year-old Lola Cowan was walking through the Smith Street neighborhood, selling handmade paper flowers door to door. Her father was ill, and her family was struggling badly to make ends meet. Lola was doing whatever she could to help bring in money for the household. Nobody saw her encounter with the man on Smith Street that afternoon. Nobody knew she had gone to his room. Days later, police recovered Lola Cowan in his room, and the scene deeply affected responding officers. Officers stepped out into the hallway, unable to continue. Lola Cowan, who was 14 years old, became one of the youngest victims in the case. The following afternoon, he noticed a room for rent sign outside the home of William and Emily Patterson on a nearby street. Emily was inside on her own, cleaning the house. He knocked and offered to do some small repairs in exchange for a lower weekly rate. Neighbors on the street watched him fix a broken screen door that afternoon. He seemed completely ordinary, calm, polite, and unhurried. Once he knew Emily was alone, he carried out the crime. Emily Patterson was 31 years old. She left behind a husband named William and 2 young boys. That same evening, William Patterson came home to a quiet, empty house. He called out for Emily. No answer. He asked the neighbors. Nobody had seen her since the afternoon. At 11:30 that night, kneeling beside his bed to pray, he stood up and accidentally lifted the edge of the bedspread with his knee. He looked under the bed and realized Emily had been dead. He already knew before he saw anything else. The city was in shock. 2 women gone in 2 days. Police wasted no time and began sweeping every boarding house in Winnipeg, assuming the American traveling offender had crossed the border. Catherine Hill quickly picked Mr. Woodcoats out of a police lineup without hesitation. Witnesses from a clothing store, a barber shop, and a city tram all gave the same description: a stocky, dark-complexioned man with fresh, deep scratches on his face. The description was sent out to every town near the Manitoba border. A reward of $1,500 was announced for information leading to an arrest. For the first time in over a year, police had a real trail to follow. The man made several mistakes in Canada he would not have made at home. He kept calling local farms ranches, a word people in that part of Canada simply do not use. The people he said it to found it odd and remembered it well. When news of the Winnipeg crimes reached them, they reported straight to police. Officers traced his path and worked out which direction he was heading next. A local constable in the small town of Killarney, Manitoba, spotted a man matching the description and stopped him. The man said his name was Virgil Wilson, a working man just passing through. He was polite and completely relaxed, so relaxed that the constable was not fully convinced he had the right person. He brought him to the local jail as a precaution anyway. His shoes, socks, and belt were removed as standard procedure, and the cell was locked behind him. That night, Virgil Wilson was gone. He had found a small piece of wire inside the cell, worked the double lock open, and slipped out into the dark without making a sound. He spent the rest of the night hiding in an old barn outside of town. In the morning, he found a discarded pair of hockey skates, pulled the blades off, and tied them to his bare feet as makeshift shoes. He began walking south toward the American border. He stopped a farmer along the road to ask for a cigarette and stood there talking. No proper shoes, a ragged sweater, hockey skate bottoms on his feet, as though nothing at all was wrong. The farmer grew suspicious after the man moved on and went straight to the constable. Police caught up with him less than a mile down the road. He was taken to Winnipeg and placed in a secure cell at the Rupert Street police station. There were no more escapes after that. The net had finally closed. In his first week in custody, more than 40 people from across 2 countries viewed him in lineups or identified him from photographs. Almost all of them placed him at or near crime scenes. San Francisco police sent fingerprints from his earlier criminal record. They matched prints lifted from multiple crime scenes across several American states. The knife found in his possession had the exact burn marks on the blade that Detroit investigators had predicted and described months earlier. His wife confirmed she had not seen him at home during any of the periods when the crimes took place. He was formally connected to 22 offences, the first on February 20th, 1926, and the last on June 10th, 1927. Faced with all of this, he denied everything. He told a reporter from a Manitoba newspaper, "Such a crime is impossible for a man of my high Christian ideals." The trial became the biggest news event Manitoba had seen in many years. Every seat in the courtroom was taken from the first day to the last. Witnesses placed him at crime after crime with calm, consistent testimony. The families of those who were affected spoke in court, and the gallery sat in near silence throughout. The defense put forward an insanity argument. His wife testified about the strange behavior she had seen during their marriage, the constant unexplained clothing changes, the religious visions he described during his hospital stays, the uncontrollable jealousy. His aunt described years of deep fear and sudden violent episodes. Both women were clearly trying to protect someone they loved, and everyone in the room understood that. The prosecution called a psychiatrist to the stand. The doctor agreed the man had a deeply disordered mind, but he stated plainly that the man understood what he was doing and knew the difference between right and wrong. Under Manitoba law, that was the only point that mattered for the insanity argument. The defense failed completely, and the case was now in the hands of the jury. The jury took less than an hour. Guilty. Judge Andrew Dysart sentenced him to capital punishment. He stood in the dock and looked at the judge with no expression, no fear, no emotion, no sign that any of it had reached him at all. He appealed to the High Court of Manitoba. The appeal was dismissed. The day before his execution, he met with the families of 2 individuals, including the mother of Lola Cowan. He sat through the entire meeting and still refused to admit to anything. On January 13th, 1928, he was taken to the place where the sentence would be carried out at Vaughan Street Jail in Winnipeg. He was 30 years old, and he had been on the run for nearly 2 years. The prison official asked for his final words. He looked out at the witnesses and said, "I forgive those who have wronged me. No confession, no acknowledgement, no apology whatsoever for 22 lives ended." The sentence was carried out. The procedure was later described as mishandled. The procedure did not end quickly. Official records documented the cause of death, echoed the pattern the investigators had identified earlier. Now that the full account of the crimes has been told, the question that remains is, who was this man and what made him this way? His name was Earle Leonard Nelson. He was born on May 12, 1897, in San Francisco, California. Both his parents died from syphilis before he turned 2 years old. He was raised by his grandmother, Jenny Nelson, a strict and deeply religious woman who ran a cold, rigid household, guided entirely by the Bible. From his earliest years, Earle was a difficult and unusual child. He spoke to people who were not there. He left home in clean clothes and returned wearing dirty rags that belonged to strangers. He stole small items for no clear reason. He was removed from school at age 7 for frightening his teachers and the other children. Around age 10, he was struck by a streetcar while riding his bicycle and suffered a serious head wound. He was unconscious for nearly a week. When he recovered, people around him noticed changes. His headaches were constant. His moods were harder to predict. His grip on everyday life seemed weaker than before. As a young man, he moved between petty crime and failed attempts at steady work. At 18, he was sent to San Quentin prison for breaking into a cabin. After release, he enlisted in the army and deserted. He joined the Navy and deserted again. He tried a third military role and deserted a third time. By 1918, the Navy had him committed to Napa State Hospital for the mentally ill. He was 18 years old. Doctors at Napa recorded hallucinations, a heavy fixation on religion, and a powerful urge to escape confinement. He broke out twice and was brought back both times. The third time he escaped in 1919, the hospital stopped chasing him. They wrote improved in his file and closed the case. They also wrote that he was not violent and not dangerous to other people. Both of those statements turned out to be wrong. After release, he found work as a janitor and married a woman named Mary Martin, who was 58 years old. The marriage fell apart quickly. Earle was controlling, unpredictable, and frightening to be around. When Mary refused to take him back after he walked out, he lost what little stability he had. On May 19, 1921, he posed as a plumber and got inside a home on Pacific Avenue in San Francisco. he found 12-year-old Mary Summers alone in the basement and attacked her, and her cries for help brought her brother running. Earle escaped but was caught within 2 hours. A judge sent him back to Napa with a written order stating he was dangerous to be at large. He escaped from Napa again in late 1923, was caught 2 days later, and was held there until May 1925. When they released him once more with those same 3 words, "Discharged has improved." 10 months later, Clara Newman opened her front door on Pierce Street, and the counting began. In just over a year, 22 women would lose their lives. Earle Nelson is now recognized as one of the first documented serial offenders in North American history. His crimes spanned multiple states and crossed an international border at a time when police agencies had no shared system for tracking patterns across different cities or countries. His case contributed to later discussions about how law enforcement must communicate across borders and how the mental health system needs to take more responsibility before releasing dangerous individuals back to the public. Napa State Hospital had written records of his violence, his delusions, and the risk he posed. They released him twice anyway. Each time they wrote, improved, and moved on. Every warning was on paper. None of it was acted on. The 22 confirmed individuals, Clara Newman, Laura Beale, Lillian St. Mary, Mary Nisbet, Beata Withers, Virginia Grant, Mabel Fluke, Blanche Myers, Lola Cowan, Emily Patterson, and others across California, Oregon, Washington, Iowa, Missouri, Pennsylvania, New York, and Michigan, were ordinary women living quiet lives. Most were alone. Most were simply trying to earn a little extra money by renting out a spare room. They opened their front doors to someone who appeared completely safe. That one moment of trust cost every single one of them their lives. The most dangerous people do not look dangerous. They arrive politely, with a calm face and a simple story. Share this video so more people understand how cases like this happen and what warning signs were missed along the way. Subscribe for more true crime stories told with care and respect for the people at the center of them. Stay alert, trust your instincts, and look out for the people in your life.